Hello, so you may have heard of drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and you may know just how important those drugs are in the fight against diabetes, for weight management, and also for fighting against inflammation. But have you ever thought about how those drugs may be influencing the fragrance industry? There have been reports from users that their sense of smell and their relationship with fragrance has been changed whilst they've been on these medications, and I just wanted to look into the evidence or lack of evidence for any effect of these drugs on our sense of smell and our scent preferences. So if you've not seen me before, I'm Claire. I talk all about perfume science, perfume history, perfume psychology, and I also just love to do perfume reviews as well. So if that kind of thing interests you and you haven't already done so, then please do consider subscribing, and please also press the like button if you do enjoy this kind of content. So I'm a scientist in real life, and I have looked at the publications around this topic and the reliability of the evidence around this topic. And I've also just read a few anecdotal reports from people who are on these medications and what they say about how their scent preferences and relationship with fragrance has altered. And I just thought I'd present to you the reasons why that might be, and perhaps also talk about the publications that are out there talking about this topic too. But first things first, we need to talk about firstly what are GLP1 receptor agonist drugs. What do they do? So this class of drugs were initially formulated to treat diseases such as diabetes because they affect blood sugar levels. These drugs mimic the effects of a hormone called glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP1. This hormone is naturally released when you eat, and it sends a satiety signal to your brain to stop you from eating more. GLP-1 also has effects on your stomach emptying, so it slows stomach emptying to make you feel fuller for longer, and it also has effects on your blood sugar levels by increasing the release of insulin and suppressing the release of glucagon, and in that way it can reduce your blood sugar levels. These effects together make drugs that mimic the actions of this hormone very effective in treating things like diabetes, managing weight, and also reducing inflammation. And it's those properties that have made these drugs incredibly profitable in the world of pharmaceuticals. And clearly they have a big reach. They have a lot of people that they can help because a lot of the world are overweight or have type 2 diabetes. So the reason we're talking about these drugs in this video is because there have been user reports, there have been changed relationships with fragrances, and there are also reports that people have changed scent preferences on these medications. And that's important because when you think about the number of people already on these medications or planning on taking up these medications in future, it's really a big chunk of the potential fragrance market. So University College London estimated last year that around 1.6 million of the UK population had taken GLP-1 medications within the last calendar year. And they also predicted that the number of people taking it in the next year would increase up to 3.3 million. So that's a huge chunk of the UK population. In the US, the latest report from 2025 showed that 12.4% of the adult population had taken these medications for weight loss. So that's not even everybody who's taken these medications, and it's still 12.4%. That 12.4% was building on a figure from only just a year earlier of 5.8% of the population. So you can see the growth in the uptake of these medications. And even when I look around on YouTube, I see a lot of creators talking about their relationship with GLP-1 agonist receptor medications. So if such a big chunk of the population and even creators on YouTube are on these medications, surely if there is an effect on scent perception or scent preference, we will see that reflected in the fragrance market. Can we try to understand what these medications affect on our sensory perception or on our scent preferences is going to be? Is there actually any documented, scientifically identified effects? Or can we even hypothesize that there's an effect on our scent preference? Well, I've looked into it and there's really a lot of theories and not very many high quality research papers out there. I will talk about one research paper which I think is well carried out and makes some important conclusions. But I also just want to take you through the theories around how these medications might be influencing our scent preferences. First of all, we need to think about where these receptors are in our bodies, and those include your sensory, taste and also smell receptors in your brain. So that means these medications are potentially affecting the cells that are involved in our smell perception. But what are the potential reasons as to why these medications might be affecting our scent preferences? So the first one that you might immediately think of, especially if you've been on these medications, is that they cause a lot of side effects, or they can cause a lot of side effects, especially when you switch from dose to dose. And you might feel nauseous, you might have other unpleasant side effects like diarrhea or constipation. And those kinds of symptoms of nausea or gastrointestinal discomfort can just put you off things you're smelling at the time when you are feeling like that. And that can really change your scent preferences. You can sometimes just think, oh, something's too strong because you're already feeling a little bit sick. It's like when you're pregnant or when you are undergoing chemotherapy. There is just a heightened feeling in which you're sensitive to things that you're smelling around you. And if that includes your favourite perfume, it may not stay your favourite perfume. Secondly, leading on from the first point, once your association of pleasure with your favourite fragrance is broken, you can form new scent associations and new scent memories with that fragrance. And each time you smell it, you can think of being nauseous, you can think of those other gastrointestinal problems that you may have had at that time. And you can struggle to enjoy that fragrance in future, even when those symptoms are gone. I always think back to a time when I was really ill with flu and my dad bought me a white chocolate Toblerone. And I have never eaten a white chocolate Toblerone ever since. I just cannot even look at them without feeling nauseous. And that is the kind of association you get embedded in your brain when you're feeling really unwell. And it lingers. It does. I mean, this was 20 years ago when I had this really bad bout of flu, but I've still got that association. And if I smell something like a Toblerone and white chocolate, it just turns my stomach. Thirdly, GLP1 agonists are known to stimulate a nerve called the vagus nerve, and this nerve is involved in our sensory perception of tastes and smells. If we are on these GLP1 agonist medications, we can have overstimulation of this nerve, and that can potentially impact on how we sense different tastes and different smells. Finally, GLP1 medications also influence our appetite. They can act as appetite suppressants. They can turn us off particular foods. And in that way, it may also lead to changes in our scent preferences. Really, if we can't eat something chocolatey or rich and vanilla-y in a dessert, then perhaps we might also not want to smell them, or perhaps we might be more drawn to those smells. So in these different ways, these medications may be impacting on our scent choices and even our overall consumption and need for fragrance in our lives. How do we think that our scent preferences are being impacted by these drugs? So really there's a lack of evidence one way or another here, which I will get onto later. And really this is important to the fragrance industry because knowledge of your audience and your consumers is power. If you know what they want, you can make it and you can market it. And ultimately, this kind of knowledge could be the key to having a smash hit fragrance, especially with the huge growth in the number and percentage of people in particular populations that are taking these medications. So going to the published literature, I would say there's only really one well-conducted study that has been published so far on this. This came out back in 2025. And this study looked at both taste and smell perception. So they took people who were on these medications, and that included all the different types of medications within this class, so Mounjaro, Wegovy, Ozempic, all of those different medications, and they assessed them and compared them to people who weren't on those medications, and they matched them for things like age, smoking status, whether these people had ever had COVID, all the things that might affect your sensory perception. And they actually found with taste, there was a significant difference across all 5 different tastes. So they found that people who were on these medications had a lower perception of different tastes. And that was across the sweet, bitter, umami, sour and salty tastes. When they looked at the scent perception, they did not find a statistically significant result, but they did find that the result was approaching significance. So scientists assess significance at a 5% level. If they find that the difference is less likely to occur than a 5% chance, then they take that result as statistically significant. In this test, they found that the result was likely to occur at a 7.6% chance. So that suggests that there may be a particular subset, perhaps even in this group, that are perhaps more particularly affected than the others in the group, and that might be masking the overall effects. So the people who aren't as affected may be drowning out the signal from the people who are very affected. Of course, it could also mean that there is no significant result, but that kind of approach of significance suggests there may be a trend. It's important to say here that the sample sizes for these studies was not huge. And that trend may approach significance if more people were studied and if people in those groups were stratified in some way. Very interestingly, the people who seemed to experience side effects, so things like constipation, diarrhea, nausea, were also the people who had the highest perceptions of taste and also smell. So they could discern different smells, they could discern different tastes better than the people who didn't have those side effects, which may suggest that those side effects are somehow related to our senses. Notably, women involved in the study had a higher perception of smell than men did, so they could tell more between different smells. And that might be important, evolutionary speaking, in things like bonding with babies and also in mate choice, because we know that scent is very important, evolutionarily speaking, when women are choosing mates. So you may be thinking, hang on Claire, how can you assess taste independently of smell? Smell is very much involved in how we taste things. Sometimes if you pinch your nose and then eat something, you can't actually taste it. So how are they discerning between the taste and the smell perception? Well, actually the tastes they assessed here were very basic tastes. They didn't really look at really how we would experience the world when it comes to taste. So for example, foods that have a very volatile element to them, so things like chocolate, for example, might have a very different result in this test to the other tastes that they assessed. In conclusion, really this whole thing is in flux. We do not know for sure whether there is or isn't any effect on our scent perception. We do know that there are anecdotal reports where people say they have suddenly become obsessed with fragrance, having taken these medicines. We have anecdotal reports of people saying there have been a shift in their scent preferences with these medicines. But of course, we need scientific, well-controlled studies in order to determine whether there is an overall effect. What is clear with these GLP1 medicines is that it can cause changes in our own body odours, which can affect our own smells. And we know from my previous videos just how much your body odour can impact your own perception of your fragrance. Looking back at fragrance over the last 20, 30 years, I believe there have already been huge shifts in our scent preferences based on our diets. If you think about the amount of high-fat, sugary foods that we have introduced into our diets over the last 30, 40 years, you can see a complementary shift in our scent preferences towards gourmand fragrances. Vanillas, caramels, and really sticky, sweet, sugary smells have been a big part of mainstream perfumery over the last 30 years. And we've also seen a shift away from traditional styles such as chypres. And now I'm wondering, with this huge and very sudden uptake in these medications, whether we will see another big shift in our scent preferences in future. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have enjoyed it, then please do press the like button, and please also consider subscribing if you haven't done already. And please do let me know if you're comfortable, your own experiences with GLP-1 medications. Have you noticed any shift in your scent preferences? Have you noticed any general trends in your consumption of fragrance? I'd be really interested to know. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.